Welcome to Veteach. Veteach is India's first learning platform especially designed for B.Tech students. On this platform, we provide university-specific video lessons for all B.Tech branches. Along with this, we provide training for campus recruitment, IELTS, TOEFL, etc. Whichever state or university you may belong to, Veteach will empower you. Please install our app and subscribe to our YouTube channel. The title of this passage is Growing Up in New Zealand. Let's see the questions first so that we get an idea of what kind of questions we are being asked. Questions 15 to 20. These are again basic true or false questions, and if you read the passage clearly, it's pretty easy to write the answers there. Questions 21 to 27. Classify the following things that relate to report 1, report 2, report 3, report 4. So we basically have to classify the given things into reports. Whatever it is, we have to classify them. Let's go back to the passage and read. It has long been known that the first 1000 days of life are the most critical in ensuring a person's healthy future. Precisely what happens during this period to any individual has been less well documented. To allocate resources appropriately, public health and education policies need to be based upon quantifiable data. So, the New Zealand Ministry of Social Development began a longitudinal study of these early days with the view to extending it for 2 decades. Born between March 2009 and May 2010, the 6,846 babies recruited came from a densely populated area of New Zealand, and it is hoped they will be followed until they reach the age of 21. In this paragraph, it is conveyed that New Zealand Ministry of Social Development is conducting a study on 6,846 babies born between 2009 and 2010. They want to study to allocate the resources, and also first 1000 days are very important and very less is documented about this period. This paragraph talks mostly about the allocation of resources to the 6,846 babies recruited in the years 2009 to 2010. By 2014, 4 reports collectively known as Growing Up in New Zealand had been published showing New Zealand to be a complex, changing country with the participants and their families being markedly different from those of previous generations. Here, the author is conveying by 2014, 4 reports came and these say New Zealand is a complex, changing country. Moving on to the next paragraph. Of the 6,846 babies, the majority were identified as European New Zealanders, but 1/4 were Maori, indigenous New Zealanders, 20% were Pacific, originating in islands in the Pacific, and 1 in 6 were Asian. Almost 50% of the children had more than one ethnicity. This paragraph shows the bifurcation of the 6,846 children that they're talking about. Next paragraph. The first 3 reports of GUINZ are descriptive, portraying the coherent before birth at 9 months and at 2 years of age. Already, the first report, Before We Are Born, has made history as it contains interviews with the children's mothers and fathers. The fourth report, which is more analytical, explores the definition of vulnerability for children in their first 1000 days. In this paragraph, it is said that the first 3 reports are descriptive and the fourth report is analytical. The first report, Before We Are Born, contains interviews with children parents. Moving on to the next paragraph. Before We Are Born, published in 2010, describes the hopes, dreams and realities that prospective parents have. It shows that the average age of both parents having a child was 30 and around 2/3 of parents were in legally binding relationships. However, 1/3 of the children were born to either a mother or a father who did not grow up in New Zealand, a significant difference from previous longitudinal studies in which a vast majority of parents were New Zealanders born and bred. Around 60% of the births in the cohort were planned, and most families hope to have 2 or 3 children. During pregnancy, some women changed their behavior with regard to smoking, alcohol and exercise, but did not. Such information will be useful for public health campaigns. This particular paragraph gives the details of the first report about the parents, about their marriage and about pregnancy. Now We Are Born is the second report. 52% of its babies were male and 48% female, with nearly a quarter delivered by cesarean section. The World Health Organization and New Zealand guidelines recommend babies be breastfed exclusively for 6 months, but the median age for this in the GUINZ cohort was 4 months. since almost 1/3 of mothers had returned to full-time work. By 9 months, the babies were all eating solid food, while 54% of them were living in accommodation their families owned. Their parents had almost all experienced a drop in income, sometimes a steep one, mostly due to mothers not working. Over 90% of the babies were immunized and almost all were in very good health. Of the mothers, however, 11% had experienced postnatal depression, an alarming statistic perhaps, but once again useful for mental health campaigns. Many of the babies were put in childcare while their mothers worked or studied, and the providers varied by ethnicity. Children who were Maori or Pacific were more likely to be looked after by grandparents. European New Zealanders tended to be sent to daycare. In this paragraph, there are details of the second report, which is called as Now We Are Born. There were details of recommendation of the breastfeeding, about the economical condition of the women. It says the income of the parents were dropped. Also, it gives details of immunization, about the childcare facility, etc. Moving further, Now We Are Two, the third report provides more insights into the children's development. It provides more insights into the children's development physically, emotionally, behaviorally, and cognitively. Major changes in home environments are documented, like the socio-economic situation and childcare arrangements. Information was collected both from direct observations of the children and from parental interviews. Once again, a high proportion of New Zealand 2-year-olds were in a very good health. 2/3 of the children knew their gender and used their own name or expressed independence in some way. The most common first word was a variation on mum, and the most common favorite first food was a banana. Bilingual or multilingual children were in a large minority of 40%. Digital exposure was high. 1 in 7 2-year-olds had used a laptop or a children's computer, and 80% watched TV or DVDs daily. By contrast, 66% had books read to them each day. Here, the details of the third report were given about the physical development, impact of the home environment, and other details. Those were collected with parental interviews. This report also gives details about the digital exposure. Moving forward, the fourth report is about the environmental risk factors such as being born to adolescent mother, etc. And this was taken from Europe and first time used in the context of New Zealand. Moving forward in the passage, in addition to descriptive ones, future reports will focus on children who move in and out of vulnerability to see how these transitions affect their later life. To date, GUINZ has been highly successful with only a very small dropout rate for participants. Even those living abroad, predominantly in Australia, have continued to provide information. The portrait GUINZ paints of a country and its people is indeed revealing. At the end, the author concludes by saying that the GUINZ has been very successful so far. Now let's move on to questions and see if we can solve them. These are true or false questions, and we just have to say which statement is true, which statement is false, and if it is out of the information given in the passage. Question number 15. Findings from studies like GUINZ will inform public policy. This statement is true, and it is given in the first paragraph. In the third line, to allocate resources appropriately, public health and education policies need to be based upon quantifiable data, so it is a given and the answer is true. Question number 16. Exactly 6,846 babies formed the GUINZ cohort, and the answer for this statement is true. Question number 17. GUINZ will probably end when the children reach 10. And the answer for this statement is false. Let's go back to the passage and see if we can find the statement. It is given in the first paragraph, last sentence, that it is hoped they will be followed until they reach the age of 21 and not 10. So the statement is false. Question number 18. Eventually there will be 21 reports in GUINZ. And the answer for this statement is that it is not given. The entire passage talks about 4 reports. Question number 19. So far, GUINZ has shown New Zealanders today to be rather similar to those of 25 years ago. And the answer to this statement is that it is false. When we go back to the second passage, they've given that growing up in New Zealand had been published showing New Zealand to be a complex changing country. Changing is the key word, and hence the statement is false. Question number 20. Parents who took part in GUINZ believe New Zealand is a good place to raise children. The answer to this particular statement is not given. because it is not about opinions of being a good place to raise children or being a bad place to raise children. It is more about the facts, and it is way out of our information. Moving on to the next set of questions, questions 21 to 27. We have to classify the following questions into report 1, report 2, report 3 and report 4. Question number 21. This is unique because it contains interviews with both parents. And the answer to this is report 1. It is mentioned in report 1 that it contains interviews with both parents. In the paragraph number 4, it is made very clear that before we are born, the first report has made history as it contains interviews with children's mothers and fathers. So the answer is report 1. Question number 22. This looks at how children might be at risk. And which report says it? And the answer to this question is report 4. And it is given in the passage 4. Last line says, the fourth report, which is more analytical, explores the definition of vulnerability for children in their first 1000 days. So the answer is report 4. Question number 23. This suggests having a child may lead to financial hardship. In which report has it been mentioned? And the answer to this question is report 2, where they've mentioned in the 6th paragraph that while 54% of them were living in accommodation their families owned, their parents had almost all experienced a drop in income, sometimes a steep one, which says that there are financial hardships, and it is report 2. Moving on to the question number 24. Information for this came from direct observations of children. The answer is report number 3, where they've mentioned in the 7th paragraph that information was collected both from direct observations of the children and from parental interviews. Question number 25. This shows many children use electronic devices. And the answer is report 3, where they've mentioned in the paragraph 7 that digital exposure was high. 1 in 7 2-year-olds had used a laptop or a children's computer, and 80% watched TV or DVDs daily. By contrast, 66% had books read to them each day. So it's report 3. Moving on to question number 26. This was modeled on criteria used in Western Europe. And the answer is report 4, where in the 8th paragraph, they've mentioned that increase the likelihood of poor developmental outcomes for children and draws on experiences in Western Europe where the specific factors were collated. It's report 4. The last question, question number 27. This suggests having a teenage mother could negatively affect a child. This is also from report 4, where they've mentioned in the 8th paragraph that being born to an adolescent mother, having one or both parents on income tested benefits and living in cramped conditions, these are the hazards that they've been talking about. So the answer is report 4. So that's it for today, guys. I will be dealing with learning and reading skills in IELTS. Please come back for more videos. Stay tuned. Bye.